Today I'm going to be talking about native development with Godot, specifically GDNative and GD extensions with 4.0. I'll mention a little bit of other options, but this is mostly going to be like a very introductory, beginner level talk. So my name is just Manley. I'm an AWS community builder. It's not a job. It's just like association with Amazon. I'm a professional engineer in the games industry. I've worked for 2 games companies right now. Currently, I work at Gearbox Software with their online services team. There's a Godot project called Tetraforce. It's like a Zelda-like kind of game, and I did a lot of the cloud infrastructure development for that project. And that's something you guys might have heard of me from. Additionally, I'm not from Toronto. I'm from Michigan, but Toronto is a great area, and at this point, it's the group's pretty diverse. So it's great place. So when we're talking about native development for Godot, generally what we're talking about is building binaries that will run for a specific platform and just that platform. Preferably the code could be compiled for multiple platforms, but it'll run natively as a binary for all those platforms. So you'll have a different binary for Linux and a different binary for Windows. And if you have different versions, like different processors, like if you have an ARM processor, you need a different one from x86 processor, different binary from an x86 processor, and all kind of that. Now, the reason you'd want to do something like that is there's a few things. The biggest one that a lot of people go for is performance. GDScript, it's getting more and more performant, especially with 4.0, and it having a lot of, and the typing getting a lot more intertwined. But it's still, and probably will never be as fast as just writing native code that talks directly with the processor. Additionally, a lot of code that is written natively in like C++ or C can be used in other game engines like Unreal or Unity through their binding systems. I'm going to be talking about C++, not really a whole ton of C. C++ is generally my ball. So for C++, you take a bunch of code. Generally, you have your C++ files, and then you have your header files. Your header files are like references, or like code that's copy and pasted into your C++ files that are used to reference other C++ files and other objects that might exist. The binaries that you can make can be static or dynamic, or just an executable. In this case, we're just going to be talking about static and dynamic, mostly just dynamic. But a static binary is something that would be bound directly to the executable at compile time. As in, like the executable in the static library will be part of the same .exe file when it's handed off to a player. While a dynamic library is, those like .dll files that you see, they're loaded by the executable at runtime generally, and sometimes they're loaded on start. Other times they're lazy loaded, which is when they're loaded after the program has initially started off. I believe both GDNative and GD extensions does dynamic lazy loading, and anyone's welcome to correct me if I'm wrong in that respect. So GDNative is a way to load and run dynamic libraries in your Godot projects, specifically in the same kind of vein as you would with a script. So the gist of GDNative is you create a binary. That binary gets linked to a GDNative lib file in Godot, and then you can reference, you can create scripts that reference that GDNative lib, and you can use them as normal scripts with exported variables and whatever you would like to do. A lot of this is achieved through a repo called Godot CPP, which you can just go Godot, the Godot engine on GitHub, and go to the Godot CPP repo there. There's the master branch, which is the 4.x, and then there's a 3.x and a 3.2, 3.1 for whatever kind of Godot version you're using. If you're cloning this, which we'll get into why you would want to do that later, make sure that you're doing recursively, because it does include your the Godot headers, which are used for building your project. Oh, apparently I have a link there. So generally, how I like putting together native script projects is I have a source directory, an include directory, and a third-party directory, which includes the Godot CPP. The Godot CPP project, generally, if it's in my GitHub repository, I'll add it as like a submodule, so it can be checked out whenever somebody else pulls it down. The entry point, this is going to be the file that is going to be responsible for connecting all of your code to Godot and registering your new objects and scripts. The sample node, this is like the example, like a new object, a new script that you're going to want to create. You'd have a CPP file for that, and then you'd have a HPPP file, which is just a header file. It can be .h as well. It depends on, most of this here is just self-organization. A lot of this can change. The include can be at the head. You don't have to have a third-party directory, but this is generally the way I like to organize things, just so you all are familiar as I move forward. Building projects with C++ is always a thing. So I'm going to talk about two different build systems, both scans and CMake. Scans is what's used by the engine itself, so it's pretty popular within the Godot community. And the other one I'm going to look at is CMake, which is more industry wide. So scans is just generally like a Python script that points at all the headers, points at all the points of the binaries to pull everything together and generate it from there. There's an example script. I'll show more of this when we get into the demo. But if you want to download it, there's the link there. Additionally, you can find it on the Godot docs. It's a good place to get started. And then with CMake, when it comes to like minimum file, it's a little more straightforward. I feel this is pretty industry standard. All you have to do is add the subdirectory for Godot CPP, and then use the target link libraries to join your project with the Godot CPP bindings, and then run that on whatever platform you're trying to build on. So for an example, now jumping into the code, an example, this is the example provided by the Godot docs here. Generally, this is a script that extends a sprite that makes it do like a loop-de-loop using trigonometry. So right here, there's no math really involved here. That's more of just in the example. But this is just declaring that the things to notice here is that this is in the Godot namespace. For those unfamiliar with C++, a namespace is just kind of like a grouping of code. You can create multiple namespaces for multiple things. But generally, you don't want things with the same name to overlap in the same namespace. That's what we could cause issues. But this is creating a class called GDExample, which is extending sprite. And then there's a macro here that adds in a bunch of additional code that's used to bind the class to Godot, among other things. It's a little bit magic to me. Haven't dug into it a whole ton, but it's pretty essential. And then you can start kind of doing a lot of this is like normal C++. You have your constructor, your deconstructor, your private variables. This is just a variable for time passed, and then you can have your initializer, which is the one there is called by Godot, and then process function, which is going to be added to this register methods function to be dynamically to be registered. Init is automatically called by Godot, while process has to be registered, which we can see here. So this would be the CPP file for that same node, and you can see here in the register methods function, it's registering underscore process to the GD example process function. So that is what will end up having this function be called as it would be called like a normal process in GDScript. And you can see here is that math I was talking about here for the loop-de-loop. And it's initializing the variable because it's not initialized here, so it gets initialized in init. Once you have like something you want to, a script you want to add, you need to then tell Godot that your binary has that script. So in a way that it understands. So right here, it's these externs here means that it's being exposed on the dynamic library, which is essential for Godot actually being able to read these. So it does some initializing and deinitializing here. This stuff's pretty standard. But then in here, in this Godot native script init function, this is where we can call register class to call our class. And it's also worth noting that there is a header file being included here, so we actually have a reference to that object. So I have a demo here for GDNative. Unfortunately, it's going to be on Linux because the VM that I had prepped for this is broken. But pretty much everything I'll show here should be compatible with Windows as well. In fact, the big difference here is that to set up, you would need to install. You don't necessarily need GCC. You can have a Visual Studio Community instead, but you would need Python, Scons, and probably Make as well, which apparently you can install here with Scoop, or you can install it manually. This is just the Godot docs for compiling for Windows. So where is that project here? Okay, yeah. So I have here is this is a project I was working on with Andrew Glubrecht and Joseph Lesko, which are the other big people in Tetraforce. Didn't get a whole lot too far, but I thought it would be a good project to show off GDNative with. Let me zoom in here, see what's going on here. Okay. Yeah, so I have a source file here. This is pretty simple. It has both the headers and libraries right next to each other to make everything super duper simple. So here is we'll start with the example script. So here is that same exact example. It's a very minimal example file. It's not the same one. It registers process. The process doesn't do anything, but it exists. It has a hello world function that just gives hello from C++. And then you can see in the header here, it's including this Godot.hppp and node.hppp, which is where it gets this gets the macro and this node type from. And it's just defining all the values here that would be defined by this class. And then here in the GD library, which acts as my entry point, you can see I'm including the header here, so I have a reference for the example. I can register here, and then you have the standard initializing and deinitializing code. Well, I also have a scoreboard script in here well, I mean, all it does is it has like a dictionary where it keeps track of scores for multiple players in a match. I don't know why the typo's there, but it doesn't break anything. For compiling this, I have a scan script, and this is just the standard scan script here. So to compile this, you can do just scans platform equals, and then the platform you're wanting to build for. So I'm on Linux, so I'll do Linux, and I went ahead and built for Linux. And if I want to build for Windows, I can just do scans platform equals Windows, and I will go ahead and update for Windows, and you can see that it's dropping in the game bin 164 directory here. If I go to game bin 164, there is my libsynthwave.dll, and in my Linux directory, here is the .so file. So now, if I go to that, if I go to that game directory and open that up, and by the way, on Windows, you would just run the same scans same way once you have everything installed. And you can run it either in batch or PowerShell, and it should be should run just fine. So let me open up the editor here, and inside of Godot, we have our bin directory, and here you can see the synthwave.gdnlib, which has a reference to all the different libraries for every platform. So you can, I just have Windows and Linux here, so it's pointing at the DLL for Windows 64-bit and Linux for the SO for the Linux 64-bit. And for the infidem scripts, where's script player? No, it'd be the, where was it be here? That would be UI maybe? Yeah, I know the systems. Yeah, here's scoreboard. Okay. Sending or okay, right here. And core systems, here is a native script, which is just the same as the script. I can open it up. It doesn't have anything here. I'm not exactly sure what the point is of this is in 3.0. But over here on the side, you can see I have define the class name and the library that it's pulling from. And you can add an icon and stuff as well, like you can with other scripts.
If you're wondering why that script editor is the way it is, it's just because the script editor expects that all scripts are editable in a text format, or unless it's a visual script. But it tries to open it and it just doesn't work. So it's just a weird artifact you have to ignore.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's what I thought, but it might be nice to just be able to open up like the raw file, because I know this is like very, very similar formatting to pretty much every other resource in Godot, so it might be nice for that. I know a lot of the problems have been fixed in 4.1.
It's all going to be different in 4 with GD extension.
Yeah. What was I going to add here?
Particularly in Godot 4, there will not be any more GDNS files.
Yeah, I have a demo later, so we'll get into that. But here's this project. So see here, if I hold Shift, it has the scoreboard information. It should as well have the hello from C++, maybe not. Actually, it's not loaded, so I can create that. So the native script, I'll just call this CPP. And library is the only library we have. And the class name is GD example. And let's create a new scene real quick. GD scene. And we will load the script in. And we should save. Hello world from C. So, is there any questions with this specific demo? We'll have an opportunity for questions at the end as well.
I'm okay.
Okay. That's good. So Godot modules, they're static libraries that are bound to the engine itself. I'm not going to go into it a ton here because it's a completely different beast. And generally, I think the major purpose that you're wanting to do this is if you're making, very core changes that have to be at the engine level for most game development. I think that GDNative and GD extensions kind of does what's needed well. And then obviously we have GD extensions, which is the replacement for 4.0. For the most part, it's very, very, very similar, just with a lot of improvements, as we'll get into here with the demo. So this is a project I'm currently working on. It's very early. I think we just started it like a month ago. And we have a add-on here called bolts, and this is using CMake for its build system. So you can see that it's just adding the subdirectory and all the CPP files, and then just binding them together. So here, actually, let's do a source. Well, I don't know. We'll just start simple. And then I have a make file here to kind of give a little simplified. But so to build something with CMake, it's a little less straightforward. So you gotta go to the directory here. So you're gonna want to generally you want to make like a directory to build in. So I just click build, and then you run CMake and then ... because you're in this subdirectory here, and that will generate sources. Did I break something? I probably broke something. I literally just compiled this a second ago. Third party does not contain this.
It says contain the CMake list.
It's empty here for some reason. Am I on the wrong branch? Nope. Let me just. Okay. So now if we go build CMake ... Okay, it's still not full Godot CPP. It's a problem with working with submodules here. Okay, I'll just clone it again. Godot CPP, and here is Godot CPP, and we'll just flag a clone, cursive. There we go. If we do that, and everything's P. There you go. That's the file I need here. Okay, so if you actually have it downloaded like you're supposed to, you do CMake.dat, It should be able to do that fine. If you're on Make now, on Linux, it should be fine. When you do CMake ... on Windows, it's likely going to generate some Visual Studio file, a Visual Studio solution, which you can just from there open and do whatever work you need to build. So this will take a moment to build. So while it's building, we can kind of look around this project a little bit. So this has that project structure I was talking about, where it has include and then it has bolt entities, and here it has an entity. This is just a very example script here where it's extending a character body 2D, which is like character body 3D, which is like the kinematic body 3D in Godot 3 for those unfamiliar. And then we have a C++ file that does nothing. Right now, entity is kind of like something that's going to be expected to be built upon. And then there's a player script that just returns whether or not something's a client, which is always true at the moment because we don't have networking implemented. So it should be a very simple project to flow around. There's a main.cpp here, which should look very familiar, but there's a little bit less stuff going on here. There's one extern and 3 for the initialization, which registers a initializer and terminator instead of having them all separate things. And in the initializer, that's where we can use class.db to register all of our different classes. And one of the really cool things about GD extensions that Aaron was mentioning is the fact that you don't actually need to have native script files. Anytime you create like a class that's registered to Godot and through GD extensions in 4.0, it will be seen in editor as an actual class. So I can show that here if I open up Godot 4. So here we go. Here's the project. Right now it's very simple, but if I go to help and then search, and then if I search entity, you can see right here under character body 3D, there's entity and there's player entity. And if we go to player entity, it has the docs open, and we can see that there is that isClient method that we were talking about earlier. And so if we take, if I create a new node here, this node, actually it'd probably be best to change this to a layer entity. And we can add a GDScript to it. So it extends player entity just like that, just like a normal typing in Godot here, and we can do print self is client, which is that one function we have here. And get some Godot 4 error messages. Run it. See that it's true, and in the code here, I believe that's just hard coded. So go to the HPPP. Yep, just initialize to true. So building Godot 4, building C++ in general, and the bindings here is a pretty big project because it's giving access to all the features, almost all the features in Godot, which is obviously a very extensive game engine at this point in time, and keeps getting bigger. Any questions on that? Anywhere? Any clarification might be helpful or anything?
No, not really.
Okay. I'm kind of moving through things pretty here. Any additional questions or conversations? We kind of got through those demos a little bit quicker than I was expecting.
So I will ask obvious questions in case people who watch the video later, they are not attending the event, but they are maybe curious. And instead of asking a question under a YouTube video, they might be asking obvious questions like, why should they choose C++ over GDScript? What are the benefits?
Yeah. Like I believe I touched on it briefly at the beginning. But the biggest reason to go to pick native like GDNative or native script C++ over GDScript, the biggest one is always performance. Another one could be the fact that maybe you want to use like a different physics library that's not offered by Godot, like a third-party physics library, or just a general third-party library that doesn't have any Godot binaries for it. You can pull in those libraries into your own, native. You can pull them in natively and expose them as either native scripts or just classes in GD extensions.
So let me expand the performance item because this is something a lot of people say, like performance, but it's such a generic term. Performance in what sense? What kind of systems should fall under? If you do this in plus, it's better.
Personally, I think that most things just make sense to be done in GDScript, especially since if you're planning to launch on consoles or something, then you just need to port the engine. You don't need to port these additional libraries as well. But performance-wise, if you can get it done in GDScript, if it's not something that's happening every frame doing like a tons of calculations, so something like physics you might not want to write in GDScript. So if you have like an AI that's making like a million calculations, that might be something a bit more pushed to native. If you're doing anything with rendering, that might be pushed a little bit more towards native. Anything that has a lot of calculations that could be speed up by just making that calculation a bit more efficient. That's the kind of thing. Like, even like player input, even though that happens on any frame, you're not going to really get to see any big difference whether or not you're calling that in native script or C++ versus GDScript. I mean, there is a difference, but I don't think there's any way any user will be able to tell.
From the developer's perspective, the dev time between like doing it in C++ versus GDScript, if it's not a substantial gain, well, just go with GDScript then.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
GDScript, it's a lot. It's a really good language for getting things done, especially for game development. It's developed the Godot engine, so they work really well together. While C++ has been around long before I was born, or at least it feels long. It's made for pretty much everything. It's it's so widely used in games, like Unreal Engine obviously uses a ton, and the base of Godot engine still the foundation is still C++, but for just building game projects, especially at the indie level, you can, or at the AAA level, you can save a lot of time as well if they were going this way. But time-wise, unless it's something you can like import in a library in C++, GDScript is probably the way to go.
I have one last obvious question that I often hear or see in forums people ask. This is sort of a comment/question. When people want to do network or they want to implement networking multiplayer elements in their game. I know not every online game is a multiplayer game, like you actually have a presentation. about that. But I'm going to guess for basic level network operations, GDScript's methods are good enough. But if you're writing a decent MMO, you might want to go C++ with all the other stuff. So is that a correct assessment, or like you?
Yeah, well, I think if you're running you're developing an MMO scale game,
Yes.
or just like level of networking, you're probably going to need to develop a solution more specific to your title as well, or some sort of, or like you'd have to encapsulate it into smaller groups of players. Like if you want like, you know, hundreds of players all connected to like the same session. It might be worth having C++ to optimize some of that so you can handle that. But you know, you can get around that by only having like 15 players and doing some weird cheat stuff as well. But for the most part, I think the most straightforward solution would just be to optimize the code to increase the player count. But there's many clever solutions you can get to go around that as well.
The thing with stuff like that, though, is if you roll your own multiplayer networking solution, then it'll only ever be as good as your solution. Whereas if you use the built-in stuff and then the Godot people upstream then implement more optimizations in their code, you can take advantage of that automatically.
Yeah, well, the hard truth is that you can't create an MMO by yourself.
Right.
So, like, if you're going to try to make an MMO by yourself, I don't know what my suggestion would be to whether you use the Godot stuff or build your own stuff. If you're a badass engineer, I'd say try doing it your own. But otherwise, you'd be best sticking to the built-in stuff into Godot. But generally, to have like the kind of craziness that modern MMOs are releasing with, you'll probably need something not necessarily more powerful, but more engineered to the specific problem of your title.
Don't kill my dreams, man.
You can build up to it.
I'm teasing. I don't want to do networking ever. So.
So
one question that people might ask would be, why do C++ when you can do C#? Do you have an answer for that?
Well, I have. I guess one of the major reasons would be preferences. To like, personally, like, I feel like the Godot integration with C++ is significantly better than the C# integration, just because it's, Godot is built in C++, so binding it is pretty straightforward. The C# support isn't bad either. It's still, and I know it's getting better, especially with 4.0. There is a little bit of a performance gain with C++ with C# compared to C#, but I don't think it's really that significant. I haven't done a whole ton of C# stuff specifically with Godot. So I aside from some preference, and maybe if you want to get really technical on speed, and maybe library support, but if there's something that supports C++, there's probably a port over it to C# as well for at least the major stuff.
Just to throw a statistic at you, C# is about 10 times faster than GDScript, and C++ is about 2 times faster than C#, which means that C++ is about 20 times faster than GDScript. That's only if your game is like bottlenecked by scripting, though. It's not going to make your game 20 times faster just to change the language. And one thing I'll mention is a downside of C# is that you have to bundle mono, which is big. It's like 50 megabytes. So it doubles the size of the engine to have C# support.
Oh wow! Is that going to be true with when it's ported over to .NET as well? Is it going to have a .NET binary to go along with it? Or
yes. So .NET Core, which is the old name for the new .NET stuff, is a complete rewrite, and it actually takes up more disk space than Mono because they decided to do like more optimizations in there.
That's interesting. It makes sense too. I mean, like Microsoft has a lot more resources going on that. I'm sure there's other stuff we don't know going on there too. Or is it done open source now?
It is, yeah.
It is, okay. Awesome.
So maybe I need to find the right person for this. Maybe we need a presentation for building games with C# in Godot. Because we have often taken care of like the GDScript angle. Now we have C++ taken care of. We need to see the C#.
I'm gonna be honest. It's not. It's really easy.
I actually did it one afternoon, like 2 years ago. But
yeah, I think one of the advantages over C# for C# over like C++ with Godot is that getting started with C# with Godot is really easy.
It was as easy as running GDs, like just starting a GDScript and typing in. You didn't have to worry about like compiling and the scans, so all this like setup.
Yeah.
I don't know if there has been any more improvements since like, I don't know, 2 years ago. I looked at it for half a day. But if it's, what did you say, 10 times faster than GDScript?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, C# for most people, as far as performance goes, if this setup isn't as strenuous as C++, it might be a very good choice.
It'll get you most of the way there with the advantages of being much easier to set up and arguably having better usability and error messages and debugging tools.
I would assume so, yes. Good. So that's a very welcome change we're expecting to see with 4.0. Cool.
I'm just shooting this out here. Has anyone tried F#?
No.
Okay.
No one's written games in brainfuck.
So speaking of performance, if one of these languages is 10 times faster than the other one, is it going to make us sell our games 10 times more? That's a better question. That's a better question.
No.
It might actually be the opposite. Because you might spend more time developing a game using C# or C++ compared with GDScript, so you'll be able to pump out the game in a longer amount of time, so you'll get less games pumped out.
Right.
Yeah.
And more potential for bugs to creep in, since you'll be implementing more things yourself instead of relying on the engine developers' work.
So, Joseph, one thing I want to mention to you is in your presentation, you showed a construct from the documentation.
Yep.
If you look at the GDNative demos repo in the Godot organization, I did some work I think about a year ago to update that repo, and the constructs in there are a bit more nicer and better documented and stuff.
Okay, that's good to know.
And you actually reminded me that I actually have a GDNative project locally that has like stuff in this construct for like ARM support, but I haven't added that into the ones in the demos yet, so I should do that right now.
Cool. Happy to be the instigator.
So I was thinking like the right time to use this, right? So like in my mind, it probably doesn't make a ton of sense to do an entire game, especially if you're indie developers. It's 1 or 2 guys and you're trying to optimize for time, right? It probably doesn't make a ton of sense to use like some kind of language binding setup in a different language for most of a game. But there obviously will be cases where like you have one thing that's running 60 times a second and it's just getting hit a bazillion times. Yeah. And that might make sense to move over. So you might have like specific functions, specific classes that you go ahead and do this with. But most of the stuff, like the UI stuff that you update once someone clicks a button, like you don't need that performance benefit there because that code's only executing once and it's already taking, microseconds to execute.
Yeah, so like the artificial thing in my head that I try to differentiate it is if, for like the project I'm currently working on, is would this be something being touched by mostly a designer or mostly an engineer? If it's mostly an engineer, then maybe that's something that could be put into like a native library to be maintained as an engineer would maintain it. Well, anything that a game designer is going to be making a lot of changes that needs to iterate a lot faster could go into GDScript, and obviously anything that doesn't need to be in C++ probably shouldn't as well. But
Brian, you did remind me of one other thing I want to mention, is that when you're using C# or C++, it has to go through a marshalling step. So when you're communicating with the engine, there is a very small performance penalty to do that, to the point that if your GDScript code is just a method with one line in it that calls another method, you're basically just entirely doing marshalling. So in that specific edge case, GDScript might actually be faster than C# or C++.
Got you. So it's almost like you want your objects then to be segmented, and you would do it or okay.
If your code is entirely API calls, you're probably going to be better off in GDScript.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess it makes much more sense to write sort of game agnostic systems like AI stuff. Sort of decision making things, you have input output conditions like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in Brian's game, you've been working on planet systems, like a lot of procedural stuff. If you have a very advanced economic model, all that stuff could be running in the background, making decisions about items, scarcity, that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see myself actually. I don't anticipate a need because of what I'm doing. Because I'm not doing any advanced simulation stuff.
Yeah, but if it got to the point that you are suffering from Godot is trying to run stuff in the background, well, that could be just pushed to the C++ layer if necessary.
That is sensible.
Yeah.
I'm unlikely to use this. I'm just curious, for future knowledge.
Yeah. Cool. So nice. Any
have future plans to play with C++ after this?
Not in the near future for me, but because my game is very ambitious, at some point I might have to investigate for the similar reasons that I presented to Brian. My game is about it's urban farmer, and I will have some market conditions and some products. I don't think if it will ever get to that stage, but if I need some AI stuff running in the background, maybe I'll look into C++.
And some AI is perfectly fine into GDScript. It just I think it's very complex, and
I have yet to write that first in GDScript to find out whether I need the C++. So that's okay. If I ever hit that bottleneck, maybe.
Yeah, I think you almost have to you scope out, this is the minimum platform I want to support, and just test the thing with the minimum platform. If it works, then don't do anything. If it doesn't, then you might have to get a little more aggressive, creative.
Anybody else has any ambition or curiosity to look into C++?
Speaking of platforms, if any of you need help publishing something for ARM or another architecture, you can hit me up. I'll help you out.
Cool.
I recently have been obsessed with porting things to different architectures. I got an ARM MacBook Pro just to do ARM Mac and ARM Linux development, and then I also have a VM for RISC-V.
Oh wow!
Yeah, out of curiosity, have you done any console work?
Nope.
No. Okay.
I hate closed platforms.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm not interested in consoles. I'm not even interested in Android or iOS actually.
Yeah, well, the annoying thing about consoles is that it's all can't even talk about it. Aside from you did it. Oh, cool. But I know there people have gotten Godot to run on consoles and stuff, and I don't. From what I've seen of the code base, it doesn't look like it'd be super difficult. But
Sonic Colors runs on consoles, so that was apparently made in Godot. Though I don't know if that would be the best
showcase.
Yeah, I heard that was not a great game, but it was a game that was released in the world that made money. So.
It runs on a heavily modified version of the Godot engine, though. There's a lot of things changed. They did a couple completely new renderers from scratch, including DirectX and whatever the Switch and PS4 APIs are.
Maybe when Godot 4 is finally stable, we'll see more big budget development with it.
So speaking of which, Aaron might give us some hints.
Oh yeah, such as when it's getting released, because we're waiting with bated breath.
2023.
Okay, that's a year.
2023. Okay, not 2022. Good news. Okay.
Yep, I can.
Because
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to
Actually,
the
if you look on Juan's Twitter, he has a tweet that he made back in 2020 where he specifically said the Godot will not be released in 2022 because he was expecting it to come out in 2021, but actually it's coming out in 2023. So he's still right, but for a wrong reason.
Yeah, he's right. He was right, but he was wrong in his soul.
Yeah.
Now, specifically, the functionality for exporting objects from Godot, like 3D objects to be worked on in Blender or something, does that work in the current alphas? Because that is something I might need. That
was backported to Godot 3.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I forget. I think it's Godot 3.4 and newer. But they took the new GLTF module, all the work that iFire has been doing on the GLTF module, and backported the entire thing to Godot 3. So any 3D model stuff for GLTF, it's the same right now in Godot 3 and Godot 4.
Welcome.
Okay, great. Because for my game, I had to, I commissioned a model to be done, and I had to make some changes on my own, and I might need to take it back into Blender to do some other stuff. So it's good to know that I should be able to do that.
Also, when it comes to model stuff, the people that work on Blender, they've recently made some good strides in Godot compatibility. So maybe the next Blender release, whenever that comes out, will have even better Godot compatibility. I heard something about these new improvements will be in Blender 3.2.
Okay, so you mean when it exports to GLTF, it'll work a little bit better, so you're not talking about it actually being able to load in a TSCN file or something like that? Okay.
No, I'm not talking about that. There is an ESCN exporter for Blender, but it's deprecated because you're just supposed to use GLTF instead now.
Right.
Yeah, I had so much trouble with that ESCN. It looked so promising, but then it felt so broken.
Yeah. At what point was that in use? Because back when I first started using Godot, it was all you get some plugin to export a DAE Collada model. And then that stopped working after a while, and then they switched to GLTF for everything. And was there at some point in between that it was using ESCN, or did that overlap with one of those two methods? Or
GLTF support wasn't added until 3.2. I think before 3.2, in 3.1, 3.0, the ESCN and Collada were both options, and you just had to try both to see which one worked. And
because I only heard about the Collada one, and that's what I'd used. But
yeah, Collada is a terrible format, but it works, I guess.
Well, it worked for a while. It doesn't work anymore, but
oh yeah. Fun little fact: when I was I work on the demos, and the third-person shooter demo. I'm going to turn off my camera because people are doing things in my house. The third-person shooter demo, that really high-quality graphics one, in Godot 3.2.1, it had a Collada file that did not load in Godot 3.2.2, and then I had to convert it to GLTF, but also I needed to add in special extra modifications to the Godot engine for it to support that model. So that 3D model doesn't load in 3.2.1. So it's a mutual incompatibility.
Find it hard to just export an FBX with multiple animation and to convert it in a format that is easy to use in Godot. Because even if I go through Blender, it's like if you take, for example, a Unity asset, it has multiple FBX animation in separate file, and it's hard to compile all this together and use it in Godot.
Yeah, if you have an FBX file, Godot does have a new FBX importer, but I don't recommend you use it. It's mostly for like if you find an FBX file or like that's what you're given when you get a model. But if you're making a model yourself, you should do the GLTF. There is one more thing I want to mention when it comes to Blender support in Godot. iFire has been working on a feature where you'll be able to give your .blend files to Godot, and it will automatically convert them to GLTF and load them.
Yeah. I think that's already working, right? In 3.5.
I don't remember which version it's going to be included in, but I know it's not in 3.4 yet. It's a very recent thing it's been working on. It's really cool.
Yeah. But it's going to be one of those things that is planned for 4.0, but they're also going to port it to either 3.4 or 5. Maybe it hasn't happened yet, but eventually.
Well, 3.4 is a stable branch, and it's not going to get new features. If there's new features backward 3, it'll be in 3.5.
Maybe I'm wrong about the number, but there was some discussion about the 3 versions will get this feature too. A lot of things going on in those releases or the news that we get to read. Yeah.
Well, it's nice that we are getting the alphas now for 4.0. That's a good bit of progress.
Hooray.
But definitely next year. Confirmed source, let's say, right?
Well, if you ask the Godot developers, they will tell you a different answer.
Of course.
But their answer is always going to be current day plus 6 months.
It's a good rule of thumb.
Well, it would definitely.
I'm not exaggerating
but,
when I say that. In the mid 2019, they said Godot 4 will be out by the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, the internet is full of like there are records of claims like that all over the place, and but let's say in next year. Of course, 2023 is a long, like wide margin too. It could be January 1st, 2023, or December 2023.
That's why I'm not more specific than
Yes. Okay. Smart.
If they'd given 2024 as their target, they'd have had an extra day.
Exactly. Which reminds me of something that used to happen when I used to work for the man. We would be asked to do something like pretty much 5 in the afternoon on a Friday, and 9:30, 10 Monday morning, they would be asking if it was done. Like it is literally 0 business days since last time they asked. There is just the weekend, but it's like in their mind, it's been 2 or 3 days. Like I just got here since Friday night, like. But so in terms of perception, when they say like next year released, it could mean a lot of like there's a lot of leeway there. Cool.
Yeah, it's a good engineering principle, I think. You want it to be far enough away that they can't judge you for it, but close enough that they don't freak out that you're not going to deliver. So it's just all right, guys, but I got to go. That was very, very interesting. Learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I will catch up with you all later.
Okay. See you, man.
Brian.
Okay, so we could have more C++ conversation, or this is the part where we turn things into more casual conversation around Godot, around your projects. We have specific nights for show and tell, but when we have free time, like as the remaining part of the presentation nights, it's a bit open stage too. Feel free to bring up anything you would like to discuss.
Did y'all read my article on why Windows for ARM is terrible?
Windows for ARM?
Yeah, I wrote an article for ZDNet, and it got a bunch of attention from Microsoft and the Linux Foundation and stuff.
Cool. Yeah, so you're into
I
that.
remember hearing about an article like that. I don't remember if did you post it in like the Discord?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, I remember saying it.
Yeah, I think I remember you posting the link there. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Oh, I see your one-dimensional library. Haven't really found a use case for that yet, but I'm sure one of these days.
The possibilities are very limited.
Yeah.
That was a joke gone too far, maybe, but I'm done with developing that. But like, you know, it exists if you want to use it for some twisted reason.
cool. So who's working on?
I posted in the off-topic channel, by the way, the article link.
Which one?
That's where it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Now I see it. Yeah.
So I pulled it up. It's recorded, so people will look at the link perhaps. Maybe I'll copy that link and put in the YouTube description so people can actually click. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I know I saw this message. I don't know if I actually read the article. Was the title like why Windows isn't ready for ARM developers?
Yes.
Intended to kind of mimic all the Linux isn't ready for the desktop articles that had been written over the years?
That wasn't the intention. I actually originally wrote Windows isn't ready for ARM, and then the ZDNet editors added on the developers at the end.
Oh, okay.
So about readiness, this latest news from Juan dropping, well, not exactly dropping Vulkan support, but there will be changes, right, in 4.0.
Once again, Android and other mobiles are holding back us.
Yeah. So, and who here is developing games for mobile, or is it just PC specific?
Yeah, well, my first game that I'm working on is probably going to be PC specific. The second game that I've sort of played around with a bit, I could, I think, make it work on mobile. One of the things that I'd like to try is to make it work in VR on mobile, which is, you know, that's like the cheapest way of doing VR is you just get a little plastic headset and stick your phone in it. And and I think that game could work in that context, but the platformer that I'm working on right now, it has too many controls to work on mobile. I think I'd have to devote like the entire screen to, you know, fake buttons.
And Joseph, you are mainly developing stuff, not really games. Like it's about systems, performance, code, all the networking, Amazon Web Services, that sort of stuff, right? Well, with Andrew, you guys are into.
With stuff we're working with Andrew, we're working on, and I'm writing like core system code and stuff. A little bit of GDScript as well. Like I said, I shared the project off super early in development. Like we've only been working on it for a few months or so. But we're not 100% sure exactly what the direction it's going to go. I obviously have the ambition to eventually get it out on consoles and all that as well, but we don't even know exactly what it is yet 100%, so it's hard to say. But mobile's not entirely out of the question, but it's not really being considered.
And Aaron is, for those who don't know, you are working as a core member of Godot team. Correct me if I made a mistake in the description of your title.
I would not say I'm a core member, because the core member is generally like the top handful of people working on the engine that have a say in how things work. I contribute a lot, but I don't actually have any power on anything in the engine. Although I do have power over the demos and the asset library.
So you are closer to the inner circle than we all are.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, to be fair, I don't know how close to the inner circle y'all are, but I know you're not in that circle. Therefore,
Yes.
yeah.
That much I know. I'm not in. Yeah. So no, that's the like there are programmers developing systems. I mean, mainly Joseph is like that. Like he, and then
You talk about development systems. You're talking about like GUI apps, or
it's like people use Godot or they're interested in learning Godot, but then people have different ambitions. Like say you are into Godot, but your motivation is different. You are working closer to the core developer team. You're writing GitHub issues. You are looking into code. So you're in the sort of the kitchen of like you're making Godot engine.
Yep.
Say. And then there are people who are using the product to build games, and then there are people who write code to support games built with Godot, like Joseph. So it's interesting to see people from different backgrounds, but this is all like happening around the same product. So.
Yep. And everybody's got their own reasons for doing what they do and got their own agendas.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm like trying to get good double precision support into Godot and making Godot good for making like GUI apps because I love Godot's UI system with the control nodes.
Yeah, and then there is that whole other thing. I'm glad you pointed out people who build applications using Godot engine and they are solving business problems, but their product of choice is Godot because it's a good UI system. Yeah. So David and Nicholas, where are you in all these? Like, are you developing games? Are you developing code systems? Different things.
Well, for me, I'm learning programming, doing it.
Cool.
And I have a background as a 3D artist, and I'm just learning programming. I participate to the Godot add-on Jam, and I release a plugin just to learn how to make plugin. I did the project resolution plugin.
Maybe you could drop a link if you want. There's a meeting notes text channel. So during the meetings, this video section doesn't let us paste links, but there's a meeting notes part. Whenever there's something relevant, you could always drop stuff.
The meeting plan channel?
No, it's two below that. It's under online meetings.
Okay, meeting note?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to send the link. No, I just sent the link.
Cool. So it's Godot plugin project resolution. So cool.
Yeah, it was my first plugin. So.
Nice. Cool. So did you find it easy to develop?
Well, I got inspired by other plugin, but I just wanted to learn doing it, and I did something simple, but at the same time useful.
Cool. And you, Nicholas? Your microphone, I think, is off. I see your mouth move. Okay.
Sorry about that. So I've been working with a few games, mostly the startup with simple games. I'm still trying to get into it, but I mostly do Godot Mono with C#. And using an entity component system, or at least trying to using with entities instead of the nodes themselves.
So it sounds like you have Unity background.
What was that?
It sounds as if you are coming from Unity. These names are.
Not really. I'm actually trying to avoid Unity.
You're in the right place.
Yeah.
But
I
whenever
used Unity
people,
before Godot as well.
yeah, me too. And the UI actually got in the way for me. Well, the applications UI, but also the UI system to build like in the game. So and that's when Godot was a lifesaver. But whenever I hear people talk about entity component system, I always think, oh, they tried that in Unity and it's either working or not working, complicated, so they try to sort of replicate that in Godot context.
Yeah, it doesn't work off almost at all. I mean, someone is trying with RX ECS and have their own Godot version of it, but the timer is off. It can't really be implemented right now, at least with Godot's current state. But yeah, but I do like the features with Godot with animation.
Yeah,
those are pretty nice.
Yeah.
With animation tree and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's very clear. Again, with controls.
With the blend modes and such, I guess, right? Those, the way the you connect them with nodes and there's blend ratios, yeah. So is Godot 4 bringing new things to the animation system or the interface, Aaron?
I don't know any specific things off the top of my head, but it's bringing a lot of things. So
I think I heard that they were changing the UI buttons or those frame markers. There was something about the onioning or the onion skin there, something about the way.
Oh, masking, right? I think that was backwarded.
Yeah. So some cosmetic changes, and I can't remember the Twitter handle. Kalinu, perhaps, that he's fixing a lot of UI stuff.
I know the default font has changed, if anyone cares about them.
Yeah? Which one? Or for which area has it changed?
Yeah, most people like replace it with their own font. Yeah. I like the new font. I feel like it works a lot more better for prototyping. Not that the old one was bad, but I feel like with the new font you can get away with pretending like it's not a prototype.
You know what never gets old? Sometimes I see it on Facebook groups. People keep posting new Godot logo. That never gets old.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen there's a subreddit called Godotified?
No.
You need to see this if you haven't seen it.
It's who's putting in the meeting notes? Let's drop a link there. Okay, you did. Already did. Okay. Pulling it up.
Someone should screen share this, actually. You can just spend like 10 minutes looking through these and you'll laugh.
Yeah, the Linux, the Penguin Godot, I see. Godot Blender, Godot GIMP.
This is amazing.
You should click on the top button to look at like the top rated posts. The top one is sus.
Yeah. Is it okay? Godot Wader?
Yeah.
Past 24 hours top posts. Is that what you're referring to?
You see where it says links from, and you can change the time to all time.
Yes, I see. So yeah, Amogus Godot. Among Us, I see. Among Us, I see. Yeah, Among Us.
And then GDBuff, which is just disturbing.
Yes, definitely disturbing. Yep.
Well, these are way better than they should be.
Godot. Yeah. interesting way people spend their time and being creative. It's one way of getting recognition. So
full disclaimer, I made this subreddit like a year ago. And at that time, there was like a group of people in the Godot voice chat just like churning out these like all day for hours and hours.
way people really feel like that there's a community who is interested into this.
Wait, is that Godot mascot modeled in Blender actually how the Godot logo is supposed to look in 3 dimensions, like with the underbite? Because I never thought of it that way.
Are you
Godot logos in 3D on the Godot-ified thing. It's the way they, they decided that the bottom part, like below the tooth line, should be pushed outward. And
I'll look it up. Oh, you shared it, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and Gbot is does the same thing. It's just not something I had really considered.
And there's the good old Godot.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, you said you are a 3D artist. So, is it Blenders mostly, or different type of 3D artist discipline? Your mic is
I haven't done really 3D in the recent year, but I used to teach Softimage. But now Softimage is no longer in development.
Softimage, that's another application that is built by Autodesk, right? Yeah. So you're talking about Softimage XSI.
Yeah, I was teaching Softimage XSI.
Wow,
I think.
Respect. That program was so ahead of its time. It's so unfortunate they killed it. I wish they were able to modernize it and put features from that into their. I don't know if they were going to keep Maya and Max around. Those two could have used a lot of features from Softimage.
I think Softimage, from what I read, they had only 1% of the market, and it was mostly in Montreal.
Yeah, but it had really interesting features with the animation system and the scripting system. The way, like, it was really ahead of its time. But yeah, it didn't. It suffered from marketing and like it didn't get recognized until Autodesk bought it and then just buried it basically. It's common. It happens.
And I've used Unity, and I used to pay like the Pro version, like in the early years of Unity. But at one point, I realized it was getting too expensive and it was not worth it. And I could not really downgrade from Unity Pro to the free version of Unity because of the licensing. And that's I kind of stopped using Unity and I've looked into Godot.
That's interesting.
Was it a particular program that you're working on that you couldn't convert from the Pro to the free version, or once you bought the Pro version, you can just never use the free version legally again? How does that work?
Well, they did offer me to switch to the Plus version. That would have been less expensive, but then I even asked them if I could just, because I could keep my Pro version, like it was from 2019, the version. I can still work with that version, but I cannot use the free version on a different project with the most recent free version of Unity. They said I could not do that.
Wow, what a way to burn the relationship. So paying customer.
And legally, based on the licensing, I could have used the free one, but because I paid for the pro previously, they did not want it to.
Yeah. So I guess I mean you could always create a new account and download the free version, but then
But I can still use the 2019 version.
yeah. Well, their loss. So
Yeah.
anyone else coming from Unity who tried it? You said, like Aaron said, you were coming, right? Unity.
Yeah, well, I started with it, but I haven't used it for a while, except for making VR chat avatars, because you have to use Unity for that. I haven't used Unity for game development since 2018. That's also the same year I started Godot.
Cool. Yeah, I'm curious if we will ever have people coming from Unreal to this group or generally just Godot. I haven't met anyone who made that kind of transition.
Well, the main reason that I switched from Unity to Godot is because at that time, the one thing I wanted to do more than anything is make a space game like Space Engineers or Empyrean or something like that.
Yeah.
And to do that properly, you really need double precision floats in the engine. And Unity did not have that feature, and it was closed source. Godot did not have that feature either. However, the developers of Godot were like open to adding it. So I figured, hey, if I go to this open source engine, I could add the feature myself. And then meanwhile, or not meanwhile, but later on here in 2022, Godot is still experimental to have double support, and Unreal already has full-fledged support because they decided to add support for that last year with the release of Unreal 5. So if you want to do universe scale games in Unreal, you can.
Yeah, and I was actually going to clear that up for people who don't understand what that means or the implication. When you want to create solar system or like big universes, if you wanted to keep things in scale, the units scale so big, the number system is just not big enough to hold those relationships. So people
I think
come up with tricks
Kerbal Space Program developers ran into trouble with that early on.
So yeah, when things get so large, people use tricks to create the illusion of like traveling big distances or the scale of like visibility. But eventually, technically, under the hood, the number system is not letting you calculate certain things either.
Yeah.
So that's the implication. So like the benefit of having this done for you is that you'll have much easier time doing it.
The people that made Kerbal Space Program, they had to implement their own data structures, their own math, their own physics, and I didn't want to do that. The people that make Kerbal Space Program basically are just using Unity to execute their scripts and as a rendering engine, and I guess sound and stuff too. But like, they're not actually. If you have to sidestep the entire game engine when you're making your game, that's not the right engine for your game.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what
if you
is
just
the
want to
benefit?
render or something, you might as well just use like Ogre or something like that.
Or what was that other one? Torque? Something like that. Torque 3D? There is a game engine.
Yeah, that is a game engine. I don't know if it's heavily used, but it's one that I've heard of.
I think that also has some heavy-duty technical stuff really working for you. But I think it's low level, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, stuff like Ogre and I think Torque 3D are just, they're just libraries that you would, like, they don't have their own, their own UI that you would use for development. They're just libraries that you would import into, a C++ file or something.
Alrighty, I'm gonna hop off here tonight. If anyone has any additional questions or things or anything, I'm happy to answer.
Cool.
Anything.
So you are heading to Calgary, and
Yeah. So be crossing the border probably at like 2 a.m.
tonight. Yeah. Good luck.
As we were talking, I just added ARM support to the GDNative C demos, and you should just do the same thing in the C++ ones, and then I'll push this.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Awesome.
And
Thank
then
you.
everybody can grab those constructs and use them in their projects.
Yeah. So it's in meeting notes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Awesome.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
Nice,
you for the
talking to you.
presentation and safe travels.
See you, Nicholas. See you, Kapsal.
Yeah, man. Say hello to Andrew. Safe travels.
See.
He's coming to Canada tonight. So. The funny thing is, he said 2 a.m. It's going to be 4 in the morning. It is. Time difference. So, is there anything you guys want to talk about, share? You know, it's up to you. It could just be other topics too, movies. You know, sort of doesn't have to be too Godot specific.
I don't really have anything to bring up.
One thing that I'll mention that isn't super Godot related, but it's kind of. Have you heard of Open 3D Engine?
On 3D engine.
No.
Rings a bell, but I'll say no because
It's the fork of Lumberyard, which is a fork of CryEngine that is managed by the Linux Foundation.
Okay, no, okay,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
and the people in charge of that are trying to convince me to work on that engine.
Okay.
Well, that might be a good avenue for you to further your ambitions.
Yep.
Okay, so
I don't plan on
interesting.
leaving Godot, but if I did work on two engines, obviously I would be working less on Godot.
Yeah, because if you go for them, then we will have lost our inside man. So we won't be asking you too many Godot questions if you do that.
I'll be double inside man.
So during the Second World War, there was this agent who had a nickname like later, many years later, Agent Zigzag. He wasn't just a double agent; he was all over the place. So they called him Agent Zigzag. So like you'll be the double inside man. Sounds like they reminded me of that.
Well, it's good that we got another open source game engine available. Hopefully that doesn't poach too much from Godot, so both projects can keep going.
They're pretty different audiences. Open 3D Engine is more so competing with Unreal.
Right.
Godot is 50 megabytes and expects you to do a lot of things yourself. And has a beautiful language called GDScript. And Open 3D Engine, it's a huge engine. It's like 5 gigs. And it's big and bulky, and it comes with a lot of things like character controllers and terrain tools, and it uses Lua.
Right.
So it's essentially what Crysis was using back then. Like that evolved to
Yes.
Crytek Engine 3, and then they gave it to Amazon, which turned into Lumberyard when open source, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So it's been renamed twice, but it's still Crysis Engine.
That's quite a challenging engine. It's it does a lot, but you have to be very hands-on with pretty much everything.
Yep. They have that engine dual licensed under MIT and Apache, except that that license only truly applies to the games you make with it, because for the editor itself, it depends on Qt, which is GPL, so you have to deal with all the GPL restrictions with the editor.
Ah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I always wondered what Amazon was going to do going to do with that engine. Well, we could always use another Crisis game.
Yeah.
Isn't 4 coming out like sometime next year? I thought I heard some like announcement.
Which will come out first, Godot 4 or Crisis 4?
Crisis 4. Well, at least at least you'll see a trailer of Crisis 4. So. Well, I don't know. I'm not pessimistic about Godot 4 release date, but if it doesn't happen in this year, it's in my best interest because I'm writing that book, which is covering Godot 3. If all of a sudden Godot 4 is announced, it's going to screw things up with me and like publisher, because then we are going to have to revise the book from like it's going to be from scratch almost.
Yeah, it's a lot of things seems to have changed in Godot 4. I mean, just based on the presentations today, it looks like they've changed kinematic body to character body or something.
Yeah, like I cannot write a book when the product is changing. I already have a similar problem with Blender. When I started writing the book, it was at version 2.93, but sometime in December 3 came out. So we have to put a disclaimer that's like when this book, we start writing it, it's for this version. We are only covering this version. It's easy to incorporate the changes from 3, or I can simply ignore and say, well, this is still what we are covering. People may find out those incremental changes when they download the newest version of Blender. But with Godot 3 and 4, it's actually breaking changes. Code won't work. The names are all over the place. So, like the move tool in Blender won't change. It's G shortcut. Nothing of that sort.
So with kinematic body and character body, what really happened is that a lot of the kinematic body stuff got moved onto the base physics body, and then so that includes move and collide. So now anything can move and collide. Static body can move and collide. Rigid body can move and collide.
Oh, that's useful.
Okay.
Yeah. It's also a little bit weird because then a static body isn't static.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And if you talk to many people on the Godot server, there's a lot of mixed opinions there. A lot of people thinking that this is just a bad change because it adds confusion. But anyway, character body is a new type that is not really similar to kinematic body. It has like new stuff in it, and it does more things for you. So it's more specialized for characters.
Oh, okay.
So like kinematic body was like the thing that you would use if you're making a moving platform, but character body would not be suitable for moving platform.
What would you use for a platform now? Is that why static body now is movable?
There's another new type called animatable body.
Oh.
Which fulfills the role of moving platforms.
Okay.
So in essence, it sounds like static body plus rules that turn into animatable body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that option to make a static body static?
Yeah. What makes it static?
Not call moving collide on it.
Not so static body. Okay. Interesting.
Also, another physics change, rigid body was renamed to rigid dynamic body. I don't know why they did it. It doesn't make any sense to anybody I've talked to, but
it doesn't.
Well, I think that does kind of remove confusion, because rigid body, that's the one that I never actually used, but that was for making things that are affected by the physics engine. Like if you want to have like a bouncing ball or something, you would do it as a rigid body. And, that doesn't, rigid body to me, just hearing the name, I would expect it to be more like static body, where it's just, something that doesn't move instead of something that moves according to physics.
Rigid sounds like a word like doesn't move, but the actual like word in English means closer to doesn't squish. So it's rigid as opposed to soft, but it can be a little bit confusing. But on the other hand, again, pretty much every single game engine ever uses the term rigid body. Yeah. So it's like confusing for people coming from other engines. So there's a lot of mixed feelings. You know, you could see it as good or bad.
Yeah, I'll tell you why I think that happened. In Studio Max, there's soft body, rigid body, and like one is affected by the physics, the other one is sort of like rigid is affecting the world. It's like a ball, you crash it, and it's like there's a glass object, you can shatter it, physics calculations like that. And soft body is generally you have a piece of cloth like curtain that is affected by the wind, or you throw a ball at it, and then there's this sort of indentation. So that name stuck as like, okay, solid objects versus softer objects kind of thing. I guess maybe that when they were implementing the physics system, they took over all the industry like standard names, which they were all like doing the dynamic stuff, but I think dynamic at the end of like rigid is a bit redundant in terms of systems, but I guess it sounds like it is truly dynamic now because it says so in the name. Okay, interesting. And always the confusing part was the kinetic body, because kinetic body would also interact with the physics system, but kinetic bodies would have their own motion system as opposed to rigid bodies that you would have to apply a force to push them around. So engines would be, or walking characters, like you said, player character is a kinetic body. That is also true.
So when you're porting your games to Godot 4, assuming you want to go through that hassle instead of just releasing your game with Godot 3, you'll have to take a look at all of your kinematic bodies and see, are they characters or are they platforms? True. And you'll have to move them to either animatable or character.
True. Yeah. So that's not an easy port. You have to be careful.
To be fair, there's like 1,000 other reasons why it won't be an easy port, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that last statement?
There's like 1,000 reasons why it's not going to be an easy port. Like, there's a lot of things that have changed.
Yeah.
So the scope of problems, like the physics nodes are going to be just one piece of the puzzle you have to solve.
Yeah. Well, I know for like one thing, I'm depending a lot on custom plugins. Plugins that I'm writing for my project, which interact with the game code. I have to not rewrite them, but there is going to be a lot of refactoring in there too. That alone is a big change for me. With some of the new syntax or the way the classes are registered, all the plugin layer. Yeah, but it's a welcome change. I mean, it's not like Facebook is changing their interface and people are complaining, right? That happens, but and then people get used to it. And I'm pretty sure we'll get used to this too. It just feels like a lot of changes, but.
Now, it seems to me like they started talking about Godot 4 at least pretty much as soon as Godot 3 was released. Now, has there been any rumblings about what Godot 5 will be about, or are they just not even thinking about that now? Are they just going to, okay, Godot 4 brings us up to kind of a modern level, and any new features can be just bolted into this instead of, rehashing everything like we did from Godot 2 to Godot 3 and Godot 3 to Godot 4?
It's actually kind of the opposite. There are a lot of Godot developers that their brain is still stuck on Godot 3. Specifically, I don't know if you guys follow Godot development. There's a Godot developer called Lawn Jelly, and they implemented the rooms and portals culling system for Godot 3.4. And Lawn Jelly is just kind of obsessed with adding in new features into Godot 3. And those features are like, a lot of them aren't going to be even in Godot 4. So if you're using those features in Godot 3, you're just going to have to not have them in Godot 4. A lot of the time it's because it's not needed. Like, so Godot 4 is going to have occlusion culling, so you won't need the portal-based culling. But it seems weird to me to make a feature that is on a branch of the engine that's going to be obsolete in like a year or two.
Yeah, but it is a year or two, and it would be nice to have some of those features a bit earlier.
Yep, and it's perfectly fine to believe that it's a good thing to backport or make features for the old version of the engine, because clearly a lot of the good developers think that too. But it's just my opinion that the work should be all on Godot 4.
Actually, to extend Jeff's question. So if this was a private company, and if we were talking about product development or like software development, yes, there's already a team working on Godot 4, but broadly speaking, is there any kind of like in 2030, by 2030, we'll have Godot 5, and it should have like, they are kind of predicting this features should have, like, say, Unreal, like what is that, like global illumination or whatever their new system is, billions of polygons or whatever.
That would be amazing.
I doubt that. Not saying
there's a reason why stuff like that can't just be added to Godot 4 in like 4.1 or 4.2 or whatever, because these big major version changes are fairly disruptive in that, for one thing, we have to wait for a lot of features until the next version comes out. Like those new tile editor features, those would be really nice to have right now, but we can't use them yet until. And then when it does come out, then everything is incompatible. We have to relearn everything. All of our old projects won't work without a lot of porting. So if they can just add features to Godot 4 instead of moving on to a completely new Godot 5, that I think would be a better way of doing things for a while at least.
Yeah, so basically get it out there so we could utilize some of those features quickly instead of waiting for the next big thing. It's like, let's add this to the next big release, which then never gets released.
Yeah.
The question that you need to ask yourself when it comes to Godot 5, Godot 6 is, does it need to break compatibility to do this? So like a lot of the tile editor work, that breaks compatibility. Changing out the entire rendering system, oh yeah, that breaks compatibility. Renaming things, yep, again, it also breaks compatibility. However, what all of the people continuing to develop Godot 3 have shown us is that a lot of the features that people still want are backwards compatible. So I think the smart thing for the Godot devs to do would be to do a lot of 4.x releases before we get a Godot 5. I'm hoping to see a 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, maybe more before we start worrying about Godot 5. That's my hope.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for too. Is one of the things with Godot up to this point that Godot 3 is really good for 2D stuff, but it was never that great for 3D stuff, and it looks like Godot 4 is finally bridging that gap. But once that's done, what other really major change other than a few new features and stuff really needs to be done. So yeah, I think we can stick. I'm not a Godot developer. I'm not on the project, so I'm not really speaking from any kind of authority. But I think it would be a good idea to stick on 4 for quite a while.
If you look at the history of Godot, when you had the move from Godot 2 to Godot 3, people were saying, well, Godot 2 is pretty good for 2D games, but Godot 3 will be good for 3D games. And with Godot 3, they implemented a lot of very nice things, like a modern renderer with PBR support, HDR support, all the niceties you would expect. Global illumination. But there was a problem with Godot 3. Those new features they implemented, they didn't do a very good job of optimizing them. So you have all these fancy rendering features that if you try to use on a large game, it'll just be slow. Godot 4 should hopefully be like significantly faster. Maybe like
Or even if it's not faster on release, they'll be able to make it faster without breaking compatibility. Hopefully.
Or stuff that I'm finding with the 3D, with the shadows, the quality, all the biases, the contact zones, they are the implementation looks well. Cannot talk about the implementation, but when I use the interface and the result I get, it looks so sloppy. So like the stuff that I'm doing feels counterintuitive. And in those terms, I think Unity is doing a lot better job. I'm not gonna go to Unity for a very good reason, because my game is low poly, so I don't really require that much visual fidelity as long as the shadows don't look like they are sort of jagged lines like this, one after another. So stuff
That problem
sometimes,
has not been fixed yet, by the way.
yeah, I'm afraid of that.
Godot 4.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that. Yeah, like they try to do something, but it's not really working. So there is 3D shadows and global illumination. I see nice examples. Sometimes people show their on Facebook posts, but I don't really know how much work that actually takes to do. Hey Andy,
How's it going?
good. How are you?
It's been a pretty crazy month.
Yeah,
Today's presentation night, right?
yeah.
So-
So
Yeah.
luckily it's recorded. We are still recording the event. I'll
I guess,
process the video most likely over the weekend. I'll post the link in the announcements later when I'm done.
Well, okay. Well, if there's anything I should present, of course, besides the whole Global Game Jam, I did like I tried to make a bullet hell space shooter for that.
Cool.
But one thing I'm actually trying to work in increments is this project that I wanted to share. So let me see. Okay, screen. I'll just share my full screen. How do I do this? Okay, just do it on my screen.
Yeah, the whole screen.
Yeah, frame rate. I can't do that because I don't have Nitro. All right.
There it
Okay,
is.
I've got something here. Okay, yeah, I've got your Godot IDE.
I've been looking into making turn-based RPGs, basically. I have managed to actually make one interesting sample, just testing out the whole turn-by-turn system. But I have like a little bit of a new challenge where I'm trying to work on like some type of magic type system.
Okay.
The idea I had, let me remove this. Share screen. Okay. So the idea I've been actually trying to implement is something I got inspired from an old Flash game that's called Book of Mages. It was a pretty welcoming RPG series, and I hope that once I actually get this ball rolling with all I'm doing now is my job at GameU, which is I'm actually making curriculums for Godot. I'm right now trying to make a curriculum for teaching students how to build a space shooter game and that. But once that's done, I'll definitely get myself into actually making this whole RPG game. I know one of the things that I definitely need to find out is some couple of add-ons that could actually help me create like a database for the different abilities that I want into my game. I know there's a couple of add-ons I saw in one site that hosts all the add-ons in Godot.
Well, Godot has native support for SQL databases, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Well, there is a proposed feature to add SQLite into the engine, but there's nothing right now.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, nothing like that.
You can get an add-on for it though. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I do have to present.
Cool.
How is there any questions so far? If I can answer.
No, it looks cool. I was going to ask if this was about that project where you had the character shooting ice or fire, depending on the.
Oh, that game has already been that game was long released and already posted it in. I still wish I could actually do a lot more with that project. But like sometimes when we actually do like make like a nice demo,
Yeah.
and you don't really get much reception, which sadly what I felt like happened. I'm just gonna leave it right now until I could come back another time to actually get back to work on that.
So, well, our next show and tell is a month later. Maybe that's a
Okay.
good time frame for you to find time and then work this out. Maybe the
Yeah.
database stuff. Cool.
Have you scheduled the next show and tell yet?
There's the meetup page. I haven't labeled it properly. I was trying to create the events like every month on Thursdays, but meetup, it tried to help me, but it kind of screwed up something. So every event has this event title, like the event.
Right.
Right.
So the dates are correct, and at some point, I asked it to do it 1 month apart. Instead, it actually made it like the third week of every month, and sometimes that is actually 5 weeks apart between events. So when I tried to fix it, it just went nuts. So
Yeah, it looks like it's every 4 weeks or something
Yeah.
because it seems to be going back a couple of days every time.
So as far as the schedule goes, it's going to be 4 weeks apart each event. So
No.
I think I fixed all the dates. The event titles are wrong. I have to go back and then update them. Like it's usually one time show and tell, one time presentation, unless there's a change. Sometimes we have some emergency or the presenter is not available, that kind of thing. Then we turn it into another show and tell. But usually let's show our work to each other, and one more like formal presentation followed by talks like this, a casual conversation.
Right. Yeah, I'm guessing we're not going to be having a meetup on December 29th.
Well, yeah. I learned my lesson because 2 years in a row I tried to have events in December. It's like nobody shows up, and I'm like,
well, we got one on the first. The first, I think, is far enough out that it won't be too much of a problem.
Yeah, that is actually okay, because I'm like, since I'm the host, like I sit here and I'm like, is anyone going to show up? Like, but I should be here in case someone is joining, right? So,
right.
Yeah. So that's this year's schedule. But yeah, December 1st is still a safe enough date. So
yeah,
too far apart from the Christmas or New Year relaxation plans. Yeah. So your house was flooded last time I talked to Andy. There was the storm or something going on, right, in your neighborhood?
Yeah, there's a couple of storms, and now there's like some other family issues that's going on.
Yeah.
So
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. I definitely need luck. But luckily now I actually called a day off work for tomorrow. Hopefully there's going to be some teachers assisting some of the other students.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably take the time to just do some few things I want to do alone. There has been something I have been using, and it was. You guys know about GDQuest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know that they released that learning how to code GitHub thing.
Learn to code
the
from
alpha.
zero.
Yeah. Apparently, I've been using that to teach some of my students how to code. And there's also one other instructor that caught up about some of the things that I did because I write a report on that. And he was like, now he's just still praising me because of the results that he's been seeing. So I am really liking the current work that they're doing right now. I hope that hopefully they can actually just add more and more chapters. I think they're doing. I'm not entirely sure when they're going to be actually finishing the whole alpha.
I think they do Kickstarter to collect more money to prepare more content, so it might happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are very serious about teaching. So I feel confident they will follow up.
Yeah. Well, I already am one of their backers, so.
So I think their Kickstarter that was funded in less than a day, maybe in 48 hours. So there was a big demand. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more advanced topics or more lessons in there.
Yeah.
Cool. And you're totally into that kind of stuff. Like you're teaching kids, so you need material. So to use their platform for your own needs is good.
Yeah. I kind of hope that they actually also know that I'm doing that. So
Cool.
that'll be great. The more exposure, the better. All right.
So
I'm gonna. Oh.
So are you
Hold on.
taking off? You sounded like.
Oh yeah. I had to take off. I'm
Okay.
actually not feeling that great. Stomach ache.
Feel
That's
better.
another thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was actually going to make a similar announcement. Normally, it's 9. Like officially 9 we finish, but since things are casual. But if you feel like you want to leave, feel free. You don't have to say anything. You could just hit the close button. So if you want to hang out, I'll be available for another 15-20 minutes. Feel free.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure I could leave in a formal note, okay?
Cool. Okay.
Especially for you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy, everyone.
You too.
Good night.
Bye.
I'm gonna leave as well. So,
Cool.
bye.
Okay. So thanks for coming, and see you next time.